Okay guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to show that if a and b are positive integers, then the greatest common divisor of a and b divides the least common multiple of a and b. And find the condition of a and b such that the greatest common divisor of a and b equals the least common divisor of a and b. But first, let's show that the greatest common divisor divides LCM. And the first thing we are going to do is to let A and B be positive integers. Okay? And then we let D to be the greatest common divisor of A and B. Then we gonna have D divides A and D divides B, right? Because D is the greatest common divisor of A and B. So D divides A and B. And if M is the LCM of A and B, then what do we have? Since M is the multiple of A and B, that means that A divides M and B divides M. And we know that when A divides B and B divides C, we're gonna have A divides C. Okay, so we are going to use transitivity. We have D divides A and A divides M. So we're gonna have D divides M. Okay, and hence since D is the greatest common divisor of A and B, and M is the least common multiple, so we gotta have GCD divides LCM. Now let's find the conditions for A and B such that the greatest common divisor of A and B equals the LCM. Okay, so I think when A and B are equal, the greatest common divisor of A and B will be one of these numbers. So let's claim that. I think that when we have this condition of A and B, when A is equal to B, we have to show that the greatest common divisor of A and B equal to the LCM of A and B. Okay, so what happened to this? So we have to assume that A is B. Okay, then what is the greatest common divisor of A and B? Oh, so A is B, right? So we gotta have the greatest common divisor of B and B, which is B itself. And the least common multiple of A and B, and since A is B, we gotta have the least common multiple of B and B, which is just B. Okay, so that means that the greatest common divisor of A and B is B, which is the least common multiple of B and B. And since B is A, we gotta have the least common multiple of A and B. So we have shown that the greatest common divisor of A and B is the least common multiple of A and B. Okay, great. So let's do another claim. Let's show that the least when if the greatest common divisor of A and B is the least common multiple of A and B, and try to show that A equal to B. Okay, so we assume that if the greatest common divisor of A and B equal the LCM of A and B, then let's try to show that A equal to B. Okay, so we gotta have the greatest common divisor of A and B divides A, and the greatest common divisor of A and B divides B. Okay, and also we're gonna have the greatest common divisor, the A divides the least common multiple of A and B, and B divides the least common multiple of A and B. Okay, and let's use this one here. What is this? The greatest common divisor of A and B is the least common multiple of A and B. So what can we do now? What happens now? So let's change this one into the greatest common divisor. Okay. Now, here's what happened. Let's change this one here. Okay. So since the greatest common divisor of A and B is the least common multiple of A and B. Okay. What can we have? We can have, okay, I gotta say, and A divides the least common multiple. So that means that A divides the greatest common divisor of A and B. And since we have the greatest common divisor of A and B divides B, okay, since we have this one, A divides the greatest common divisor, and the greatest common divisor divides B. So we can use transitivity. That means that A divides B. Okay, great. And then what next? Let's apply with this. So since the greatest common divisor of A and B is equal to the least common multiple, and B divides the LCM. Okay, and the LCM is the greatest common divisor, so that means that we have B divides the greatest common divisor of A and B. And since we have B divides the greatest common divisor of A and B, and which one? The greatest common divisor of A and B divides A. That means that we have transitivity. We're gonna have A, B divides A. Okay. So from this one right here, if A divides B and B divides A, so we're gonna have A equal to B. Okay. So since we showed these two claims, so we're gonna have this. We're gonna have the greatest common divisor of A and B equal to the LCM if and only if A equal to B. Okay. And that's it for this video.